Can you pass me these two things also that are on the stand over there in my show about telepathic music? On the stand, yeah. Off and on I've been using stems in my work. And there is one here in particular that has to do with all the things we make together. It's the stem that says the Eternal Network presents.
Robert, can we start?
Yeah. Yes. The Eternal Network presents me, presents Robert Filliou. That's what it is all about. I had a stamp made that says the Eternal Network presents. George Brecht uses it also, and every time we have a show, a manifestation, something, we like to use this stamp so that the place in which we do it is not so important as the fact that we are just, each one of us, one member of the Eternal Network.
Robert Crazy.
Crazy.
Robert Holy.
Holy.
Robert Fanatic.
Fanatic.
Robert Inventive.
Inventive.
Robert Genius.
Genius.
Robert Significant.
Significant.
Robert Bum.
Bum.
Robert Tart.
Tart.
Robert Loving.
Loving.
Robert Cheap.
Cheap.
Robert Magnificent.
Magnificent.
Robert Wise.
Wise.
Robert Criminal.
Criminal.
Robert Absurd.
Absurd.
Robert Pervert.
Pervert.
Robert Peaceful.
Peaceful.
Robert Joker.
Joker.
Robert Liar.
Liar.
Robert True.
True.
Robert Good.
Good.
Robert Victim.
Victim.
Robert Fool.
Fool.
Robert Great.
Great.
Robert Poor.
Poor.
Robert Killer.
Killer.
Robert Sober.
Sober.
Robert Rich.
Rich.
Robert Ugly.
Ugly.
Robert Dead.
Dead.
Robert bastard.
Bastard.
Robert Good.
Good.
Robert optimist.
Optimist.
Robert Creep.
Creep.
Robert indifferent.
Indifferent.
Robert Thief.
Thief.
Robert handsome.
Handsome.
Robert False.
False.
Robert humane.
Humane.
Robert Gay.
Gay.
Robert empty.
Empty.
Robert Soft.
Soft.
Robert pig.
Pig.
Robert Loud.
Loud.
Robert fabulous.
Fabulous.
Robert Sad.
Sad. Robert Filliou. Duchamp added that we must abolish the idea of judgment. I have worked it out further. I think that we must abolish the idea of admiration. This is a book I'm writing now. It's a book that, for the time being, the headings are made alphabetically. And this book is an illustration of writing as performing arts. And it is a thing I have never tried to do before, and which depends, of course, the development of every item depends upon the time which I give myself, or I suppose you can. George Brecht and I, when we were in Villefranche, and we started what we called La City qui Sourit. We have a stamp made, and I don't have any copy of it, but there is a book that has been made about games at the city, or the city that takes off, with a stamp that George had designed, I think. And La City qui Sourit was a very small space. We rented in a street of that fishing village by Nice. And Marianne, Donna, George and I were running it. We used to say that La City qui Sourit sells everything which has or doesn't have a city to its name. At times we used to say La City qui Sourit invents everything that has or has not been invented. We kind of considered it as a permanent creation center. That was in 1965. And we had reviews in it, information about things that went on, that people sent us. We carried some editions from Fluxus or Math, Multiplication d'Art Transformable, that Spurry was editing. We started several programs like what we call the Contribution to the Art of Gifting, where we asked people in Christmas 1966 to look upon artworks as things that could be gifted rather than objects of collection. And about 50 or 60 artists participated in this, and we all made small works that very cheap could be bought as gifts for Christmas. One thing that we did there also was, beside writing this book and having a lot of fun, is starting the non-school of Villefranche, a non-école de Villefranche. We said the non-école Villefranche never got farther than just being a letterhead. conçu à toutes fins utiles et inutiles à la cédille qui sourit, conceived for all useful and useless ends at the cédille qui sourit, and the program was on the letterhead, the whole program of the school. I still stick to it. I'm doing it right now. It's carefree exchange of information and experience. No student, no teacher, perfect license, at times to listen, at times to talk. And I dedicate the principles of political economy to Fourier, grâce à Fourier, thanks to Fourier. Fourier was the 19th century social thinker and utopist who, before Marx wrote and before Freud was born, succeeded in reconciling both. That is to say, 100 years before his time, achieving already what many people recognize the main objective behind a really true new society that would combine justice and freedom. And Fourier in particular is a precursor of many of the liberation movements that we see now. He is the one, after all, who said that when men run out of imagination, it's time to turn the world over to women and to children. And he thought he had discovered the secret of harmony. So these principles of political economy are dedicated to Fourier. For the permanent creation of permanent freedom, that's right. I came to realize after a while that when I talked of permanent creation, I spoke of the permanent creation of permanent freedom. The territory of the Genial Republic actually is more or less dedicated to the liberation of children, the child in us. Because while I considered the movement for the liberation of women as perhaps the most important thing that is going on now, the bringing of the yin, more yin, into the yang for the next cycle in the universe. I'm afraid, I must say, I must accept, I must look straight at the face the fact that I have been part of the problem myself for all the women I have known. And phallocrate minable at times is the way, ex-phallocrate minable, hopefully, is the way I present myself. Former phallocratic trash might be a translation in English. So these principles of political economy I illustrate with through carrying out another research project of mine, Dessin sans voir, dessin sans savoir. Drawings without seeing, designs without knowing. I don't know really how to bring about all these projects, these social projects that I may have. In the old days, the proposal that nations exchange their war memorials to seal peace among European countries and world countries was one of them. I don't know how to achieve them, but somehow by illustrating them through drawing made with my eyes closed, this very spontaneity of these drawings is a way in which the complexity of the projects, the design, might be solved. Meanwhile, I'm thinking about workers without whom there is no poetry, and I'm looking for and I'm doing research to find out in what aspect poetry, which is futile, could be useful to them. Another way to put it is how to reconcile the gnosis, which is so happy, so light, and economics, which is so dismal. How to go from work as toil to work as play. Of course, everything is poetry, toil as much as play. But where is joy in all this? Every life, I go on to say, it's its own reward. So, if we want that work should be its own reward, wouldn't it have to be the finishing line rather than the starting point? It might be a question of doing nothing, doing, quote, nothing, unquote, not being inactive. Because life acts in such a way that its work is itself so done, so made. Bit difficult to translate. La vie est ainsi fait que son travail est elle-même ainsi faite. And I realized this was the first chapter of Principles of Poetical Economy. I wrote to the butterfly that is flying in my studio. I dedicate this first chapter. I baptize both the butterfly in this chapter Pierre. It is 11 o'clock and 51 minutes. I failed to note which day it was. The very first stamp I used, I think, was in 1961. At the time, I had the idea to have a gallery, to open my own gallery. And I opened a gallery called Galerie Légitime in my cap. And I had a stamp made that says Galerie Légitime couvre chef-d'œuvre. It's only in French that there is a double meaning to this sentence, couvre chef-d'œuvre. It means two things. It means it covers up a masterpiece. That is, it covers up the head, it covers up the brain. It's all in the brain anyway. It means also covering up works. Couvre-chef, a hat over works. Couvre-chef-d'œuvre. So in my cap, the same as the one I'm wearing now, inside my cap, on top of my head, I had small works of mine. At that time I used to make things where I measured up things or I mummified them. And then in the streets of Paris, I would walk through the streets and I would come up to somebody walking in the street, and typical dialogue might be, are you interested in art, monsieur, or madame, or mademoiselle? And if they said, yes, I would say, well, you know, I have a gallery. And if they express some interest, I would say, here it is. And there inside my hat were the works. They were a little bit bigger than, let's say, this grape, you see, or this stamp. And then we would look at the works. to my friend Adi Kupke, Fluxus activist from Copenhagen, at whose Center Gallery in 1961 I had my first show in public performance, who died yesterday, 20th of October 1977. M ranges from the Misfits Fair, London 1962, to The Mysterious Female Guest.
Yes, 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 I will, I will, I will.
In 1968, George, Marianne and I were broke, so we decided to close down La Cité qui Sourit. We had a poster made. There is always someone making a fortune, someone going bankrupt, we in particular. And since la fête est permanente, La Cité qui Sourit turns the page and announces the realization of the Eternal Network.
Part of research on the Eternal Network was telepathic music number 2. It is number 2 because, as I remember, telepathic music number 1, the score of telepathic music number 1 is just one word, telepathy. But maybe well, here it is, the score of telepathic music number 2, which was then at that time in 73. Telepathic music number 2 dedicated but not limited to these Canadian members of the Eternal Network: Vehicle Montreal, General Idea Toronto, Works Calgary, Image Bank Vancouver. Here's the score now. Concentrating silently, send waves of greetings, weather luck, man luck, woman luck, to any or all of the members of the Eternal Network the world around. Duration is split second to all day or all night or all day and night. Performance note: no proof of reaching or benefiting is necessary. Knowing yourself, suspecting others to be performers of telepathic music is sufficient. The network is everlasting. So that the way I see the network, as a member of the network, the way now it exists artistically through the collective efforts of all these artists in Europe, in North America, in Asia, in Australia, in New Zealand, everywhere, in Africa also. I have received communication from Yemen, for instance, is that each one of us artistically function in a network where
which has replaced now the concept of the avant-garde, and which functions in such a way that there is no more art center in the world now. Nobody can tell us, as Terry Reid put it, I think, in Australia lately, nobody can tell us where the place is, where we are is where the things are taking place. And although we may need some to meet at times or to gather information in certain places, the network works on its own. But this artistic network itself, it may help to think of it as being part of the wider network where artistic activity becomes just one of the elements. The Permanent Creation Toolbox is the only work I did where I used neon, because an electrician was around, and I had an ordinary toolbox, a blue toolbox, and I asked him to set in neon inside the box for me 2 words, innocence, imagination, and I presented this as the Permanent Creation Toolbox. Since in my mind it's irrelevant whether somebody, it is equivalent to me whether something is well made or badly made or not made. I suggest that in terms of permanent creation, whether any growth, any idea, any thought, any concept is well made or badly made or not made is equivalent. And I have used this concept, illustrated it in certain vision. I got interested in permanent creation, and I use this word frequently rather than using the word art, because as I conceive or I practice art as creativeness, and often I have seen non-art as being the diffusion of the artworks coming from that creativeness. I start all over again. I made a mistake there. I see art as creativeness, and I have often defined anti-art as the diffusion of the works coming out of that creativeness, and non-art as being creative without caring whether one's works are diffused or not. But anyway, for me, the idea of creation came very soon to imply that creation should be permanent, and that I should practice the idea and the ideal of permanent creation. One of the first works I got involved in, which uses the concept of permanent creation, is the Popoidron, which is a permanent creation center. I conceived, together with my friend, the painter and architect, urbanist Joachim Pfeiffer, in Paris in 1963. And it is a building that could be used, of which I will have probably occasion to speak. So meanwhile, from the time I thought of the principle of equivalence to the time into I went to apply it to the permanent creation of the universe, I had started something which I call the territoire de la République géniale, the territory of the genial republic. The idea was to create my own territory and to propose, of course, to everybody to create their own territory, in which I said people living on that territory will give their time developing their genius rather than their talents. Well, these are very tall words for a very simple thing I had to put across. That I just work on the hunch, the intuition, that just being a human being is to be a genius. And that by insisting too much upon developing our talents, we may lose this quality that we share probably with every living creature. And that is to say that while I kind of think generally that everybody is perfect, I wonder whether people realize it themselves. Anyway, it would be a good subject of research. I proposed at one point, I just stated it this way: everybody is perfect, including me, with a big interrogation point. How about the science of perfectology? And I started for a while to do a bit of research in perfectology, because the whole idea of the Genial Republic was based upon the concept of research. Research, I proposed, is not the privilege of people who know. On the contrary, it is the domain of people who do not know. And every time we are turning our attention to something that we do not know, we are doing research. And in other words, what I was saying is that to everybody, you're your own territory. You don't have to appeal to higher authority to make up your mind about anything. And you can carry on your own research. So I engaged after this on many, many research projects. And one of them was applying the principle of equivalence, well made, badly made, not made, to the permanent creation of the universe. I call this research on the origin. I did this work in 1974. And again, it turned out to be a progression, of course. And I think I discovered a certain a relationship, a connection between astronuclear physics, as I understood what I read in works of vulgarization that I bought, and the tradition as expressed in the Tao Te Ching in the world. So I went back, but I went back even further. I went back to pre-biology, pre-life, and I proposed a new concept which I call pre-biological genius, which I define this way. Pre-biological genius is the total set of conditions that affect the passage from the atom to the cell. And I proposed as a general principle that genius is having followers. I always like to take as an example the case of the fly or the oyster. But the fly is a pretty good one. The fly, I understand, existed already in its present form 150 million years ago. So I think of this fly that started it all. As a genius of a fly, it had many followers for 150 million years up to now. But it is possible that at that time there could have been a fly that, I put it this way, would have been able already, built in, to resist, like DDT, for instance. It wasn't followed. I can make examples in many aspects of spiritual life suddenly will come to your mind. And in this research on pre-biology, I saw the strategy of evolution, as I dealt with evolution, I saw as the strategy of evolution changing error, and as the tactics of evolution changing solitude. Because in all the projects I've been involved in, which include social factors reflecting upon the world at large, this principle of equivalence of permanent creation, it's a way to communicate with people, because all my life I have lived from and I work for my friends. And as I see the ideal organization of society for me, you will see I worked on this in what I call the principles of poetical economy, on which I've been working for some 15 years, would be to arrive at a happy solitude that for every human being, that as long as the world at large is what it is, our solitude is an unhappy solitude. I've just closed down now the Speed of Art, which is the last research project I've been involved in. The Speed of Art, which is something that proposed that art is a function of life plus fiction, with fiction tending towards zero. So that if fiction is zero, life and art may be the same, but most of the time fiction is positive or negative. And if I have a function for art, I can get the first derivative. One thing that interests me is what I call built-in versus built upon. That is to say, I'm working on the hunch that solutions to problems can be found only if they are built in rather than built upon. And that we will have to wish to fly for a very, 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 very long time before we can grow wings. I live in Fluxus, a small village in the south of France, with Marianne, my wife, Marcella, and Bruce. We call our acre of land Cucumber Land. It's the mimetic territory of the Genial Republic. We grow our own vegetables, raise chickens for eggs, and Marianne makes goat cheese. We view as equivalent and try to combine and to share manual and artistic work.
what's happening. We happen to be making a film.
Between you and me, clowning closes the gap between clowns. So perhaps you realize that my trip in Japan and in the Far East has been one of the central importance in my life, in that in particular Zen, and I consider as the absolute secret of permanent creation the Zen ideal of sitting quietly, doing nothing.